Tonight, we are going to spend some time with one of the most beloved teachings in all of Buddhism, the Eightfold Path. After he woke beneath the Bodhi tree, this was the path the Buddha offered to everyone who came to him. 8 simple steps, a path out of suffering and into peace. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. The Buddha did not call this path a set of rules. He called it a way, a middle way between forcing life and giving up on it. He walked it himself, and he said anyone could walk it. Kings and farmers, the young and the old. We will take the 8 steps slowly, one at a time, with stories to carry each one. You do not need to know anything about Buddhism. You do not need to remember a single word. The teachings will settle on their own. So settle in wherever you are. Let your shoulders drop. Let the day fall away behind you. Thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk. Let us begin. We take the first step now. The Buddha called it right view, and of all 8 steps on the path, he chose to place this one at the very front. There is a reason for that. Before we learn to speak with care, before we act with kindness, before we steady the mind in stillness, there is the matter of how we see. Everything else on the path grows out of this one thing. And what is right view? It is, quite simply, a clear way of seeing. A seeing that changes everything that follows from it. Right view is about seeing things as they truly are. It does not mean believing the correct things. It means seeing what is actually here, not the story we tell about it, not the worry we add, or the judgment we paint over a plain moment. Just what is in front of us. Everything we do begins in the way we see. A man who sees the world as an enemy will fight it all day long. A woman who sees the world as a kind of gift will welcome it. The events of their days may be the very same. Their lives will not be. The Dhammapada is one of the oldest collections of the Buddha's sayings. People have carried its lines for more than 2,000 years. It opens with a simple teaching. What we are arises from what we think. The mind comes first. With our own minds, we shape the world. We then go on to live inside. The Buddha taught this path so that ordinary people could find peace. Not in some distant place, but in their own lives, in their own minds. And he started with the eyes, because the eyes come first. When our seeing grows clear, a great deal of our suffering loosens, because it was never in the thing itself. It was only in how we saw it. Once this seeing is in place, the rest of the path comes more easily. So we begin where the Buddha began, with how we see. There is a well-known story about a man walking home along a country road in the evening. He had walked this road 1,000 times. It ran from the market in the valley up to his village in the hills, and he knew every stone of it. On this evening he was tired and content. His basket was empty, his trading done, and his mind was already at his own table, thinking of the warm meal waiting for him there. The sun had dropped behind the hills, and the light was going soft. And there, in the middle of the road, just ahead, he saw a snake, long and dark, coiled in the dust, lying across his path. He stopped where he stood. He did not want to step any closer. So he waited there in the last of the light, watching it, wondering what to do. At the edge of the field stood a small house, and in its window a lamp was burning. A woman lived there, and she heard him call out. "There is a snake on the road," he called. "A great coiled snake. I cannot get past it. She took up her lamp and came out to him, walking without hurry, the small flame steady in her hand. Where? She asked. There, he said, and he pointed. Right there in the road. Do you not see it? She came and stood beside him, and she lowered the lamp, letting its warm light fall across the place where he pointed. And there, in the circle of light, lay a length of old rope, coiled where someone had let it fall, frayed and grey at the ends. It was no snake at all. It is a rope, she said. Only a rope. Someone dropped it on their way home. He stepped closer. He looked. He nudged it with his foot. It was rope. Nothing but rope. And the fear he had felt slowly left him, a fear for something that had never been there. He sat down on a stone at the side of the road and let his breath slow. The woman waited beside him, in no hurry to go. After a while, he said, I was so sure of it. I felt it in my whole body, and there was nothing here at all. There was something here, she said. There was a rope, the snake you brought yourself. She left him her lamp and walked back to her house, and he sat a while longer in the warm light, looking at the plain rope and at the road he could have walked all along. He thought of how many evenings he had hurried along this road, and how this was the first time he had truly stopped to look at it. The little lamp made everything plain, and he wondered, sitting there, how many other things in his life were ropes he had taken for snakes. The rope was real, the snake was not, and yet his whole body had braced against a danger that lived only in the way he saw. So much of what we suffer is shaped just like this. We meet a rope, and we see a snake. Someone says a short word to us, a little sharp, perhaps only because they are tired and worn down by their own long day. And we hear an insult in it. We carry that word home. We turn it over in the dark. We build a whole story around it, about what they meant and what they think of us, and what we should have said back. The word itself lasted a moment. The snake we made of it can stay for a week. Many of our snakes are not even on the road in front of us. Some live in the past. We replay an old hurt late at night and feel it again as if it were happening now. Some live in the future. We picture a thing that might go wrong tomorrow, and the body tightens against a danger that, more often than not, never arrives. The Buddha saw this in people long ago. He saw that the hardest part of a difficulty is often not the thing itself, but the extra weight the mind piles on top of it. The forest monks of the Buddhist tradition, who passed their lives watching the mind in the stillness of the woods, came to know this well. Most of what frightens us, they would say, is a rope in the dark, real enough to stop us where we stand and empty the moment the light arrives. Perhaps you know the feeling of lying awake at night, turning over something that happened or something that has not happened yet. In the dark, small things grow large. A worry becomes a certainty. A passing comment becomes proof of what someone thinks of us. This is the hour when the mind makes the most snakes. And it is the very hour when one simple question helps the most. Is this real, or is this the dark, adding shapes to a plain rope? Often, just to ask is enough, and the snake softens back into rope. Right view is not about pretending. It is not telling yourself the rope is lovely, or that you were never startled. It is looking again, in better light, and seeing what is truly in front of you. Right view is the lamp the woman carried. It does not change the road. It does not make the rope vanish. It lets us see what is actually there. And once we see what is actually there, the snake we feared has nowhere left to live. This is why it sits first on the path. A person who sees a snake in every rope will live on edge, no matter how kind their friends are, no matter how soft their bed. But a person who learns to bring the lamp, to look again, to ask, is this real, or is this a snake I have added, begins to set down a heavy load they did not even know they were carrying. There is another gift in this, and it reaches past ourselves. When we stop adding snakes, we begin to see other people more truly too. The man who spoke sharply was not an enemy. He was tired. The friend who forgot us was not cruel. She was overwhelmed, carrying her own load up her own hill. Almost everyone we meet is doing their best with a mind that makes snakes of its own. To see that, even a little, softens us toward the whole world. And the way we see does not stop at our fear. It shapes what we do next. See a snake, and you strike at it, or you run from it. See a rope, and you step over it and walk home to your supper. Our seeing becomes our doing. Our doing becomes our days. A whole life can turn on whether we meet the world as it is, or as we imagine it to be. This is why the Buddha asked us to begin right here. There is an old story, told in many lands, about a little doll made of salt. She had been formed down by the shore, shaped from the white salt that dries along the rocks. And for as long as she could remember, she had heard the travelers speak of the sea. They said it was wider than any field and deeper than any well. They said it went on past where the eye could follow, all the way to the edge of the sky. The little salt doll grew curious. She wanted to know this sea for herself, not only to hear of it, but to truly know it. How deep was it? How far did it reach? What was it made of? So she set off walking, down across the long sands, toward the sound of the water. At last she came to the shore. The great sea lay before her, moving and breathing, the waves rolling in and sliding back out again. She stood at the very edge, where the water reached up the sand and touched her feet. "How deep are you?" she asked the sea. "How far do you go?" The sea did not answer in words. It only kept rolling in and sliding back. And the little doll understood that there was only one way to find out. She would have to go in and see for herself. So she took a step into the water, and where the sea touched her, a little of her began to soften and melt away. She took another step, and a little more of her dissolved into the water. With each step, she went deeper, and with each step, more of her became part of the sea. And something surprising happened. The more of her melted away, the more she understood what the sea truly was. She was learning it not by looking at it from the outside, but by becoming it. She walked on, dissolving, until almost nothing of her was left. And in that last moment, just before the final grain of her joined the great water, she understood the sea completely. She knew its depth and its width and what it was made of, because she was made of it too. She and the sea had never really been two separate things. And with a kind of wonder, she spoke her last words before she came home to the water. "Now," she said, "I know what I am." The little doll set out to measure the sea and found that she was made of the very same water she had gone to measure. This too is right view. The first story showed us seeing the world as it truly is. A rope is a rope. This one shows us seeing ourselves as we truly are. We walk through our days feeling like a small, separate, solid thing, pressed up against a vast world that is not us. We spend so much of our strength holding this little self together, keeping it safe, worrying over it, defending it against 100 small slights a day. But when we look closely at what we actually are, we find something different from what we imagined. There is seeing and the thing seen. There is hearing and the sound. There is a thought and then it is gone. Moment after moment, experience rises up and passes away. And nowhere inside it is there a hard little self, standing apart, watching from some fixed place. There is only this life, happening on its own. The Buddha had a word for this, anatta. It is usually translated as not self. It does not mean you do not exist. You are here. You are breathing. You are listening. It means there is no small, separate thing inside you that has to be defended against the whole world. There is just this life, and you are part of it, as the salt doll was part of the sea. And there is a second truth woven through the same story. Everything that rises also passes. The Buddha said this as plainly as anything he ever taught. All things that are put together come apart. Everything changes. And the one who sees this clearly comes to rest. This is not a sad teaching. It is a relief. If nothing stays the same, then the hard moments are passing too. The heavy day will lift. The worry on your mind tonight is already on its way out the door. Even this thought, the one you are thinking right now, is moving on. Everything moves, and you are allowed to let it move. There is real ease in this once it reaches us. So much of our tiredness comes from the effort of holding ourselves together hour after hour, as if we were a fortress under siege. But the siege was never real. It was a snake on the road. When we begin to see that we are not a small thing apart from life, but a part of it, the holding can loosen. We can let ourselves be carried for a while. There is an image from the Zen tradition that the mind is like a still mirror. It reflects whatever comes before it, a cloud, a face, a passing bird, and it keeps none of it. When the cloud moves on, the mirror is clear again, ready for what comes next. It does not grab at the cloud. It does not grieve when the cloud is gone. To see clearly is to be a little more like that mirror, present for each thing as it arrives, and willing to let it go when it leaves. The salt doll did not lose herself in the sea. She came home to it. That is what clear seeing feels like in the end. Not a loss, but a homecoming. When we stop defending the small, separate self, we do not lose anything real. We settle back into the life that was holding us all along. And there is rest in that. You do not have to keep yourself safe tonight. You do not have to hold the world in place or hold yourself together. The life that made you, that made the rivers and the dark sky and the breath moving in and out of you right now, is already holding all of it. You are a part of that, and it asks nothing of you tonight but to let go. This first step holds up all the others. When we see clearly, kindness comes more easily because we are no longer guarding ourselves against snakes that were never there. Our words grow softer. Our work grows lighter. The whole path opens out from this one small shift in how we look. This is right view, seeing things as they truly are. The rope and the sea and ourselves. And when we begin to see this way, something in us can finally let go. There is nothing you need to do with any of this tonight. But if you would like, You might simply watch. As you lie there, let a single thought arise. Notice how it comes on its own, without being called. And notice how, if you do not chase after it, it drifts off on its own as well, like a cloud crossing the dark sky, like a sound that rises and fades. You do not have to hold on to any of it. You do not have to push any of it away. Each moment arrives, and each moment goes. There is nothing here to grip. There is no snake on the road. There is only this, passing through, and you, resting easily in the middle of it. And if a worry does come, you do not need to fight it. You can meet it the way the woman met the snake. You can bring a small, kind light to it and look again. Most of the time, there is only a rope lying harmless in the dust and a road that was always open, leading home. Let us rest here a moment. Feel the body, soft and heavy, just where it is. When you are ready, we will take the next step of the path together. Once we begin to see clearly, a question rises on its own. Now that I see, which way will I turn? This is the second step of the path. The Buddha called it right intention. It is about the direction of the heart, not what we manage to do on our best days, but where we lean, again and again, in the privacy of our own minds. The Buddha described the mind as something that takes the shape of whatever it rests on most often. A path appears across a field where feet walk the same line again and again. A riverbed deepens where the water keeps running. Our thoughts work much the same. The ones we return to most become the easiest to think, until they feel less like choices we are making and more like who we simply are. Lean toward grasping and resentment, day after day, and the mind learns to live there. Lean toward kindness and an open hand, and it learns to live there instead. We are always pointing the heart somewhere. Right intention is the practice of pointing it well. It has a few directions. Toward goodwill, wishing others well rather than ill. Toward not causing harm, a heart that grows slow to wound. And toward letting go, holding the things of this life with an open hand rather than a closed fist. You do not have to feel kind to begin. You only have to be willing to lean that way. A farmer does not force a seed to grow. He plants it, waters it, gives it light and time, and the growing happens on its own. The heart is much the same. We give it a direction and a little patience, and the rest follows. Let us explore a story about a young woman who came upon an old man planting trees. She was traveling a long road, and the afternoon was growing late when she passed a hillside where an old man knelt in the dirt. He was digging small holes and setting tiny saplings into them, one after another, working slowly in the heat. She stopped to watch. The saplings were no taller than her hand. They were the kind of tree that grows slowly, that takes many long years to rise tall and give fruit and shade. The old man was bent and grey, and it was plain that he would never see these trees grown. "Grandfather," she said, "forgive me, but why do you work so hard over these little trees? They will not give fruit for many years. You will not be here to taste it." The old man straightened slowly. He wiped his hands and smiled at her. "That is true," he said. "I will not." "Then why?" she asked. He pointed back down the road she had come, to a grove of broad old trees heavy with fruit, their shade dark and cool in the heat of the day. "When I was a boy," he said, "I ate from trees like those. I slept in their shade on the hottest afternoons, and I never once knew the hands that planted them. They were gone long before I was born. They did not plant for themselves. They planted for someone they would never meet. But you will never know if these trees grow," she said. "You will never see the child resting in their shade." "No," he agreed, and he did not seem troubled by it. "But the shade will be real, whether I am here to see it or not. That is the part that matters." He turned back to the small tree in front of him and pressed the earth gently around its roots. "One day, a child will rest here and eat this fruit and never know my name," he said. "That is enough. That is more than enough." The young woman thanked him and went on her way, and the road felt different to her after that. She began to notice the trees she passed, and the wells someone had dug, and the bridges someone had laid across the streams. All of it set down by people she would never meet and never thank. She had been resting in the kindness of strangers her whole life, and had never once seen it. The old man's heart was pointed outward. He gave to people he would never meet and asked nothing in return. This is the first direction of right intention: goodwill. Simply wishing good for others and meaning it. We often think of kindness as something we do for other people at a cost to ourselves. But the Buddha taught that goodwill changes the one who holds it, first of all. A heart that wishes others well is a pleasant place to live. A heart full of grudges is not. When we wish someone ill, the one who has to sit in that bitterness, hour after hour, is us. You can feel this in small ways. Think of a morning when you woke already annoyed at someone, going over what they did, building your case against them before you had even risen from bed. The person you were angry with was somewhere else, going about their morning, untouched by any of it. You were the only one in the room with the anger. Now think of a morning when you woke, wishing someone well, picturing them happy and at ease. That feeling lives in you too, and it is a far kinder room to wake up in. There is a line in the Dhammapada that says it as plainly as anything. Hatred is never ended by hatred. It is ended only by love. This is an old and unchanging law. When someone wrongs us, the mind wants to answer with more of the same. But anger does not put out anger, any more than a fire dies when you feed it more wood. Only the water of goodwill can do that. The Buddha taught a simple way to turn the heart in this direction. He would have his followers sit and quietly wish for the well-being of others. May you be well. May you be at peace. They would begin with the people they loved most and widen the circle slowly outward, to friends, to strangers, even to those they found difficult, until the goodwill left no one out. It is one of the oldest practices in the whole tradition, and it is nothing more than turning the heart toward kindness on purpose, again and again, until kindness becomes its natural shape. This does not mean we let ourselves be treated badly, or pretend to feel what we do not feel. It means we refuse to let someone else's hard day become the shape of our own heart. We can wish a person well, even silently, even from a distance, even one we may never see again, and we walk away lighter for having done it. One thing worth noticing is that goodwill asks nothing of the other person. They do not have to deserve it. They do not even have to know. The wish lives in you and does its work in you, whatever they do with their own day. That is why no one can take it from you. A person can refuse your kindness, but they cannot reach inside and turn your heart bitter unless you hand them the key. And there is a softer cousin of goodwill, which the Buddha placed here too. The wish not to cause harm. A heart that leans toward kindness grows slow to wound. It begins to think twice before the sharp word, before the careless act, not because a rule forbids it, but because it no longer wants to. That is what it means to point the heart well. In time, the wanting itself begins to change, and everything that comes after grows easier. Our words come out kinder without our trying. Our actions do less harm. The direction we point the heart quietly becomes the direction of the whole life. There is a story of two travelers who set out together on a long road into the mountains, bound for a shrine many days' walk away. One of them could not bear to leave anything behind. He packed all he owned: heavy cloaks, cooking pots, tools, a small chest of keepsakes, sacks of this and that, in case he should ever have need of them. The other carried only a small bundle and a walking staff. For the first day they kept pace, but soon the heavily laden man began to fall behind. The straps cut into his shoulders. His back ached. He kept his eyes down on the path, watching his own feet, too tired to lift his head. The journey he had looked forward to had become something to survive. His companion walked easily. She noticed the wildflowers along the trail, and the streams running cold and clear, and the people in the villages who waved as they passed. In the evenings she had strength left to sit and watch the sun drop behind the peaks. One night, by the fire, the weary man spoke up. "I do not understand," he said. "We walk the very same road. Why is it so easy for you and so hard for me?" She did not answer at once. Then she said, "May I see what you carry?" So he opened his great pack, and together they went through it in the firelight. She did not tell him what to keep and what to leave behind. She only asked, of each thing, the same simple question: "Do you use it? Does it serve you now, on this road?" And one by one, the answers became clear to him in a way they never had while the pack stayed closed on his back. Here was a cloak he had not worn in years. Here were pots he never cooked with. Here were things he had brought only because he could not stand the thought of being without them, though he never touched them at all. He had been carrying his fear of needing them more than the things themselves. "This blanket," she said, holding up a worn and folded square. "Do you use it?" "No," he admitted. "But I might. One day. And you carry it up every hill, every day, for the sake of a day that may never come." She set it down beside him. "Is that a fair trade?" He was quiet for a while. Then, slowly, he began to set things aside. Some he left with the family who had given them shelter that night. Some he gave to travelers they met along the way who had need of them. By morning his pack was light enough to lift with one hand. And as they walked on, something happened that had not happened the whole journey. He lifted his eyes from the ground. He saw the mountains ahead, blue and enormous against the sky. He felt the cool morning air on his face. He heard the birds in the trees. The road had not changed at all, but he was no longer at war with it. For the first time, he was simply walking it. It was not the road that had worn him down. It was how much he insisted on carrying. This is the other direction of right intention. The open hand. We come into our days clutching so much. Not only objects, but old hurts we will not put down, worries we turn over at night, 100 things we are certain we cannot do without. And like the traveler, we mistake the weight for safety. We tell ourselves that holding on is keeping us secure, when often it is only wearing us out. And most of what tires us is not even in our hands. It is in the mind. An old argument we have replayed 100 times, winning it again each night. A grudge we have carried so long we have forgotten how it began. A version of ourselves from years ago that we keep struggling to defend. We set a place at the table for all of it, and feed it, and then wonder why we are so tired. We carry it only because no one has told us we are allowed to put it down. And often the thing we grip hardest is the very thing causing us the most pain. We hold a worry close because letting it go feels careless, as though our holding were somehow keeping the feared thing away. But the worry does not stand guard over tomorrow. It only steals today. The hand can open, and the world does not fall apart. It simply grows a little lighter to live in. The Buddha once compared his own teachings to a raft. A man comes to a wide river, he said, and there is no bridge. So he gathers branches and reeds and builds a raft and crosses safely to the far side. Now, having crossed, would it make sense for him to lift the raft onto his shoulders and carry it everywhere he goes, out of gratitude for the service it gave? Of course not. He used the raft well, and now he sets it down and walks on free. Even good things, the Buddha was saying, are meant to be held lightly, used, and let go. How much more, then, the things that only weigh us down? We can see this in the small things we refuse to outgrow. A way of doing things that worked once and serves us no longer. An old role we keep playing long after it has stopped fitting. Even comforts become burdens when we grip them past their time. The raft is meant to be left at the shore. We are allowed to walk on. There is an old comparison for holding a grudge. It is like picking up a hot coal to throw at someone else. Whatever happens to them, the one who gets burned first is always the one holding on. And letting go is not the same as not caring. It can sound cold, as if we were being asked to stop loving what we love. But it is the opposite. The traveler on the road cared deeply. About the journey, about her companion, about the country she walked through. She could take all of it in precisely because her arms were not full. When we set down what we do not need, we make room at last for what we do. We can hold the people we love more tenderly when our hands are not clenched around old grievances. An open hand is not an empty heart. It is a heart with room in it. And letting go is not losing, either. Hold a handful of sand in an open palm, and it rests there, every grain. Close your fist to keep it safe, and it pours away between your fingers. The things of this life are much the same. We keep them best by holding them gently. The night is a good time for this. The day is done. Whatever happened in it is finished, and going over it again will not change a single moment of what was. So you can let the day be complete, exactly as it was, and set it down at the door of sleep. Tomorrow will ask for your hands soon enough. Tonight they can be empty and open and at rest. There is nothing here to take up as a task, but you might let it travel with you. Tomorrow, somewhere in the ordinary hours, a small chance will come to lean the heart one way or the other. A chance to wish someone well instead of nursing a complaint. a chance to set down some small thing you have been gripping without noticing. You do not have to force the moment. Just see it when it comes and notice how it feels to choose the open hand instead of the closed one. The heart finds its direction slowly by being turned that way again and again in small and unremarkable moments no one else will ever see. And there is one direction you can lean right now without lifting a finger. You can wish yourself well. We are often kinder to strangers than we are to ourselves, harder on our own faults than we would ever be on a friend's. So as you lie here, you might turn a little of that goodwill inward. May I rest? May I be at ease? The same kindness you would offer anyone, offered, for once, to the one person you can never walk away from. Let us pause here for a moment. Notice the breath, moving in and out on its own, asking nothing of you. When you are ready, we will go on together. The direction of the heart does not stay hidden for long. It shows up first in how we speak. Our words are the place where what is inside us steps out into the world, where a passing thought becomes something another person has to carry. This is the third step of the path. Right speech. And of all the things we do in a day, speech may be the one we give the least thought to, even though we do it almost without pause, from the moment we wake until we fall asleep. The Buddha gave a few simple measures for it. Before we speak, he taught, we might ask whether our words are true, whether they are kind, whether they are helpful, and whether this is the right time to say them. Just these few questions, held lightly, would change a great deal about the way most of us move through our days. Speech can wound, or it can heal, and it costs us nothing either way. That is what makes it so easy to be careless with. A single sentence is light to say and impossible to take back. So the Buddha asked us to treat our words with a little more care than their lightness might suggest. He did not mean for us to grow stiff or silent or afraid to speak. He meant for us to notice that the words we scatter so freely have weight in someone else's hands. Let us turn to a story about a man who spoke without thinking and what it taught him. In a certain village there lived a man who had a habit of repeating things, not out of cruelty, mostly. He simply liked having something to say. He would carry a piece of news from one doorway to the next, and a story about this neighbor over to that one, and it made him feel, for a moment, like he stood at the center of things. One day he repeated a story about a neighbor that turned out not to be true. It spread through the village, doorway to doorway, and as it traveled it grew, the way these things tend to. By the time it found its way back around to the neighbor it was about, it had done real harm. The man saw the hurt in his neighbor's face, and he felt sick with regret. He had never meant for any of this. He went to the village elder, a woman known across the whole valley for her wisdom, and he asked her how he might undo what he had done. The elder listened to him for a long while. Then she gave him a strange instruction. She told him to take a sack of feathers up to the top of the windy hill above the village, cut it open, and let all the feathers go on the wind. He thought it odd, but he trusted her, so he climbed the hill and did as she asked. He cut the sack open, and the wind took the feathers at once, lifting them and scattering them in every direction. Over the rooftops, into the fields, across the river, up into the high branches of the trees. In moments, not a single feather was left in his hands, and they had blown so far that he could no longer see where most of them had gone. He came back down and told the elder it was done. "Good," she said. "Now go back up the hill and gather all the feathers and put them back into the sack." He stared at her. "But that is impossible," he said. "The wind has carried them everywhere. I could never find them all. I would not even know where to begin to look." "Yes," she said, "and it is just the same with words. Once they leave your mouth, they travel where you cannot follow them. You can be sorry. You can mean your sorrow with your whole heart, but you cannot gather them back." The man stood there a long moment, looking out over the valley where the feathers had vanished. And from that day on, he grew careful about what he carried from one person to the next. Words are light to speak and impossible to recall. A single careless sentence can travel for years into rooms we will never enter, doing things we never meant for it to do. The elder was not scolding the man. She was showing him something simple and true about the nature of speech itself. We do not always mean harm when we speak without thinking. Often we are only filling a silence that felt too long, or enjoying having a story no one else has yet, or passing along something we never stop to check. Talk about other people has a particular pull to it. It can feel like closeness, like being on the inside of something. Most of us know the small thrill of it. Someone leans in, lowers their voice, and for a moment you are allies, the two of you, looking together at a third person who cannot answer back. It feels warm while it lasts, but notice what it leaves behind. A faint unease. The small knowledge that if they will speak this way about someone to you, they will one day speak this way about you to someone else. Talk that runs people down does not actually bring us closer. It only teaches everyone in the room to be a little more careful around us. But the Buddha placed speech on the path because he saw how much of the world's hurt and how much of our own restlessness comes straight from the tongue. There is a plain observation handed down in the tradition. If we set aside all the words we speak about people who are not in the room, a surprising amount of our chatter would fall silent, and a surprising amount of our trouble with it. Careless speech wears many faces. It is not only rumor. It is the exaggeration that makes a better story at someone's expense. It is the sharp joke that earns a laugh and leaves a small bruise. It is the complaint we voice out of habit, spreading our own low mood around the room like smoke. None of it feels like much in the moment, but our words are how we shape the air that everyone near us has to breathe. A person who speaks well makes a room easier to be in. We have all known someone like that and felt lighter for being near them. There is a lighter side to this too, and it is a real relief. When we keep our words close to the truth and free of harm, we have far less to carry afterward. We do not have to remember which version of a story we told to whom. We do not have to defend something we stretched or keep track of a small untruth we let slip to make ourselves look better. An honest tongue makes for a mind at ease. There is a kind of freedom in having nothing you need to take back and nothing you need to keep straight. And our words do something else, something we rarely notice. They build the way other people come to see us. A person whose word is always true becomes someone others can rest beside. They do not have to wonder. They do not have to guard themselves. To be trusted like that is one of the finest gifts we can offer the people around us, and we give it not through grand gestures but through 1,000 small, plain, honest sentences said over years. And the reverse is true as well, and far gentler to sit with. A kind word, offered at the right moment, can stay with a person for years. Most of us can remember something encouraging that someone said to us long ago, a small thing they likely forgot the instant they said it, which we have carried ever since. We rarely know which of our words will land like that. A passing sentence, meant lightly, can become the thing another person holds on to in a hard hour. If careless words can do lasting harm, kind ones can do lasting good. It is the same power, simply pointed in a better direction. There is a story from the life of the Buddha himself. One day, as he was traveling and teaching, a man came to him who was troubled and full of anger. He had worked himself up over something, and he stood before the Buddha and let it all out, scolding him, speaking bitter and cutting words, doing his best to provoke him. The Buddha did not argue. He did not answer anger with anger. He simply listened and waited until the man had said everything he had come to say. Then the Buddha asked him a question. "Tell me," he said, "if you prepare a gift for someone and you offer it to them and they will not accept it, who does the gift belong to then?" The man was caught off guard. "Why, it belongs to me, of course," he said. "If they will not take it, then I am left holding it." "Just so," said the Buddha. "You have offered me harsh words today. I do not accept them, so they remain with you. You are the one who will have to carry them home." The man stood there for a long moment. The anger that had carried him all this way had nowhere left to go. And the Buddha looked at him, not with anger of his own, but with something nearer to kindness, as you might look at a person who has been carrying a heavy thing for far too long. Something in the man loosened. The fight drained out of him. After a while he sat down, and instead of shouting, the two of them began to talk. The Buddha showed two things in that short exchange. The first is that we do not have to accept every word that is handed to us. When someone speaks to us in anger, our habit is to grab the words and hold on, to turn them over and over, to let them sour a whole day or a whole week. But we can leave the words with the one who spoke them. We can decline the gift and let them carry it home unopened. The second is harder and finer. The Buddha did not win. He did not put the man in his place or score a point against him. He met hardness with calm, and the calm did what no argument ever could. The man's anger had nothing to push against, and so it fell away on its own. Hardness answered with more hardness only grows. Hardness answered with stillness has nowhere left to go. Now we can see why the Buddha gave those few simple measures for our speech. That it be true, that it be kind, that it be helpful, and that it come at the right time. Each one matters, and each one catches something the others miss. A thing can be true and still cruel, and still better left unspoken. A thing can be kind and still untrue, which helps no one in the end. And even a word that is true and kind and helpful can land badly if it arrives at the wrong moment, when a person is too tired or too raw to receive it. Not every true thing needs to be said. Not every moment is the moment for it. When we let our words pass through these few questions first, a good deal of what we were about to say turns out not to need saying at all. It is said that the Buddha himself spoke sparingly, and mostly when his words would do some good. He did not speak to fill the time, or to seem clever, or to win an argument. When he had nothing useful to add, he was content to stay silent. There is a great steadiness in a person like that. Their words, when they come, carry weight precisely because they are not spent carelessly. There is one more thing the Buddha understood that we often miss. The Buddha spoke too about the difference between words that divide people and words that bring them together. It is easy, and sometimes even satisfying, to carry a complaint from one person to another, to take sides, to widen a small crack into a wall. It is harder and far better to be the one who closes such gaps, who passes along the kind thing someone said instead of the cruel one, who, hearing two friends each speak sharply of the other, chooses not to repeat it and lets the heat die down rather than fanning it. This is speech that heals, and the world has more than enough of the other kind. Our speech shapes us, not only the people who hear it. When we speak with cruelty, the mind grows a little harder. When we speak with care, it grows a little softer. When we use our words to bring people together rather than to set them against one another, something in us settles. Every word is a small act, and it leaves its first mark on the one who speaks it. To guard the tongue, then, is not only a kindness we do for others, it is a kindness we do for ourselves. None of this means we will get it right every time. The tongue is quick, and all of us, now and then, are going to say the thing we wish we had not. The point is not to police every word until speaking becomes a chore. It is only to grow a little more awake to what we are doing when we speak. Awareness alone changes things. Once you begin to notice the pull to say the unkind, clever thing, you find, more and more often, that you can simply let it pass. And there is one more place our words matter, one we tend to forget entirely. The way we speak to ourselves. Many of us carry an inner voice that would never be allowed to speak to a friend the way it speaks to us. Quick to scold, slow to forgive, always ready with the cutting remark. The same three questions belong here too. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it helpful? More often than not, the harsh thing we say to ourselves fails all three. We can learn, slowly, to speak to ourselves as we would to someone we love. That, too, is right speech, and it may be the form of it we need most. There is nothing here to carry as a burden, but one small thing might come with you into tomorrow. Sometime in the day, before you pass along a piece of news, or fire back at a sharp word, or hurry to fill a silence, a small space may open up to you. Just a breath's worth. And in that space you might ask, without any strain, is this true? Is this kind? Does this need to be said? Even just remembering to pause is most of it. The words that belong will still be there after the breath. The ones that do not will have let themselves out. You might also notice, over the coming days, how it feels in your own body just after you speak. Kind and honest words tend to leave a person settled. Sharp or false ones leave a small residue behind, a tightness, a wish to explain yourself. Your own sense of ease can become a teacher of sorts, showing you, after the fact, which words were worth saying. There is no need to judge yourself for any of it. Just notice. The noticing does the work on its own. And there is one more gift hidden here, one the Buddha's forest monks knew well from their long stretches of silence. Sometimes the kindest speech is no speech at all. To listen, fully, without already preparing your reply, is something we offer one another far too rarely. To say a little less, and to mean what we do say, is its own form of generosity. The world is seldom made worse by a kind word held back in haste, or by a moment of real listening where we might have rushed to speak. Let us be still for a moment. There is nowhere you need to be, and nothing you need to say. When you are ready, We will walk on together. Our words are not the only place the heart steps out into the world. What we do, the plain actions of our hands across an ordinary day, speaks just as clearly and often louder. This is the fourth step of the path. Right action. After we have looked at how we see and where the heart leans and how we speak, we come at last to how we act. And the Buddha made it simple. To live well is, before anything else, to do no harm. He named a few plain commitments at the heart of it. Not to harm living things. Not to take what is not given. Not to act in ways that betray the people around us. These can sound like rules carved on a wall, but the Buddha did not mean them as rules. He meant them as gifts. The Buddhist tradition speaks of virtue as a gift of fearlessness. When you set down the wish to harm and the wish to take, you are giving something real to every creature you meet. You are telling them, without a single word, that near you they are safe, that you are not a danger to them. There are few kinder things one being can offer another. Think for a moment how much of the trouble in this world flows from the opposite, from people who cannot be trusted not to harm or not to take. To simply step off that side of the scale, to become one of the people the world does not have to defend itself against, is a good that ripples out much further than we will ever see. And the first to receive that gift is the one who gives it. A life that harms no one is a life with nothing to hide and nothing to fear. You can meet anyone's eyes. You can be at ease in your own company. We will come to what that ease feels like. But first, a story. Let us explore a story about a woman who gathered wood beside a great river. She was poor, and hers was a hard living. Each day she walked into the forest, cut what fallen and dead wood she could carry, and sold it in the town to buy her bread. Her only tool was an old iron axe, worn thin with the years, its handle smoothed by her own hands. It was not much, but it was how she ate. One morning, working close to the riverbank, the axe slipped from her grip and fell into the water. The river ran deep and fast there, and the axe sank at once and was gone. She sat down on the bank and put her head in her hands. Without the axe, she could not work, and without work, she could not eat. As she sat there, the surface of the river began to stir. Up from the deep water rose a spirit of the river, in the shape of an old man, with a long white beard and robes that seemed to pour like water. In his hands he held an axe, and its head was solid gold, blazing in the morning sun. "Is this the axe you lost?" he asked. The woman looked at the golden axe. It was worth more than she would earn in 10 lifetimes of hard work. For a heartbeat, she let herself picture it. Everything that gold could buy, the end of every hard day. And then she let the picture go, because it was simply not true. The axe was not hers. But she shook her head. "No," she said, "that is not mine. Mine was only iron, old and worn. That one is not mine." The spirit sank beneath the surface and rose again. This time the axe in his hands was solid silver, gleaming and beautiful. "Then is this the one you lost?" Again she looked, and again she shook her head. "No, that is silver. Mine was plain iron. That is not mine either." A third time the spirit sank, and a third time he rose. Now in his hands was her own old axe, the worn iron head, the handle smoothed by her grip. "This one," she said at once, and her whole face lifted. "That is mine. That is the one. Thank you." The spirit smiled and held out the iron axe to her. But he did not stop there. He held out the silver axe too, and then the golden one. "You spoke the truth when a lie would have made you rich," he said. "Honesty like that is rarer than gold. Take all three. They are yours." And the woman, who had been ready to walk home with nothing, walked home instead with her own plain axe and 2 others worth a kingdom given to her freely because she had not reached for what was not hers. There is an old kind of wealth in that woman, and it has nothing to do with the gold. To claim only what is truly ours is one of the simplest ways to live, and one of the lightest. The Buddha placed it on the path as not taking what is not given. It begins with the plain things, not stealing, not cheating. But it reaches further than that. We can take what is not ours in 100 small ways that no one would ever call theft. We can take the credit for work that was not all our own. We can take more than our share of someone's time or their patience and give little back. We can take the last of a thing without a thought for who comes after us. Notice, too, how often these small takings are not even worth what they cost us. We claim a little credit that was not ours and then have to keep living up to it. We take the last of something and carry a faint unease out the door. Each thing gained is small, and the disquiet that trails it is small. But a life is made of many such moments, and they tilt it one way or the other. To stop taking what is not freely offered, quietly, removes 1,000 small frictions we had long ago stopped noticing. A life spent reaching for what is not ours is a restless one. There is always a next thing to get, and the worry of holding on to what we grabbed, and the small untruths that have to be remembered and kept straight. But a person who takes only what is freely given carries none of that. Their hands are open. Their conscience is clear. And a clear conscience is one of the softest places a person can lay their head. The Buddha pointed to a plain fruit of this kind of living, and he called it freedom from remorse. It is not a grand or mystical reward. It is only the absence of that small gnawing we feel when we have done a thing we would rather not have done. Most of us carry more of that than we like to admit. A word we wish we could unsay, a corner we cut, a person we were not quite straight with. Each one leaves a faint mark, and the marks add up. A life of honest, harmless action simply stops adding to the pile. There is nothing dramatic in it. You only find, more and more, that when the mind turns back over the day, it meets nothing it needs to flinch from. This is not about being a saint. It is about noticing how good it feels to want less, to take only what is offered, and to owe no one anything you are keeping hidden. The woman by the river could walk home and meet every neighbor's eye. That was worth more than the gold, and the old story knew it, which is why it gave her both. There is a story about an old hermit who lived alone at the edge of a forest. He had gone there many years before to live a simple life, and over those years something had shifted around him, so slowly that even he had hardly marked it. The wild creatures of the forest were no longer afraid of him. It had not always been so. When he first arrived, the birds scattered whenever he passed, and the deer bolted at the snap of a twig, and every living thing kept its distance, as wild things do. But the hermit never once raised his hand against any of them. He set no snares. He robbed no nests. He moved without hurry and sat for long hours without stirring, and he never gave a single creature a reason to fear him. And season by season, the forest came to trust him. Birds began to land on the ground near his feet while he sat, searching for seeds, paying him no mind at all. A deer would step into the clearing and graze in his shade through the warm afternoons. One spring, a small bird built her nest in the eaves of his hut, close enough that he could watch the eggs while she was away, and she did not seem to mind him there. It was not that the hermit had any special wish to be watched by deer or visited by birds. He asked nothing of them. He simply shared the forest, taking no more than he needed and harming nothing, and in time the creatures read that in him more surely than any words could have told them. A traveler passing through once asked him how he had tamed the wild things. The hermit smiled. "I have tamed nothing," he said. "I only stopped being something they needed to fear. The rest they did all on their own." The hermit had not learned a trick. He had simply become harmless, and the creatures around him could feel it. This is the deeper face of right action. Not only the refusal to do harm, but the slow becoming of someone from whom harm does not come. The Buddha spoke of a reverence for life, a care that reaches even to the smallest creatures, and he taught it not as a rule to obey, but as something that grows on its own in a person whose heart has settled. As the wish to harm fades, even the small wish to brush aside a living thing in our way, something in us turns more careful and more kind. You can watch this grow in yourself in the smallest ways. A heart at war will swat and crush and brush things aside without a thought. A heart that has quieted finds, almost without deciding to, that it would rather carry the small creature to the open window than end it, rather step around the line of ants than through it. It is not a rule being followed. It is only that harming, even in the smallest way, has begun to feel like a coarser thing than it is worth. Reverence for life is less a commandment than a tenderness that arrives on its own once the noise dies down. And here is the part worth lingering on. Harmlessness can be felt. The animals in the story understood nothing of the hermit's reasons. They simply sensed, in some wordless way, that they were safe near him, and so they let down their guard. People are not so different. We can usually feel, without being told, who is safe to be near and who is not. We soften around some people and brace around others, often before a single word has passed. To be harmless, then, is to give everyone near you a kind of rest, to be the one others do not have to guard themselves against. This is the gift of fearlessness that tradition speaks of, and it may be among the most generous things we ever offer, though we never announce it and rarely even notice we are giving it. Think of how it feels to be near someone you do not have to protect yourself from. Someone who wants nothing from you, who will not wound you, who has no sharp edge hidden behind a smile. You can finally set yourself down. Right action is becoming that person, a little more, for everyone who comes near. And it runs in both directions. To be trusted is a gift we give to others, and to be able to trust is a rest we are given in return. So much of the tiredness people carry through a day is the low, steady labor of self-protection, the watching, the bracing for the next small slight. To be near someone you do not have to guard against lets all of that set down for a while. The more of us who become safe to be near, the more places there are in the world where people can finally unclench. That is no small thing to bring to a life, or to a household, or to a town. Consider a story about a woman who kept a small inn at a crossroads. It was a plain place, with nothing grand about it, yet travelers came from every direction, and many of them, given the choice, would walk an extra hour and pass other inns to reach hers. For a long time she wondered why. It was not her cooking which was simple, nor her rooms which were bare. It was this. She never once shorted a tired traveller, though many were too weary to count their change. She never repeated what was said beneath her roof, though she heard a great deal. She never took advantage of anyone's need. And so, slowly, her inn became known across the whole region as a place where a person could finally stop watching their own back. Beneath her roof, merchants left their goods unguarded without a flicker of worry. Strangers spoke freely, knowing their words would travel no further. One old trader, who had stayed in the houses of the rich and the powerful, said he had never found in any of them the ease he found in her plain inn. In those great houses, he said, he had kept one hand near his purse the whole night through, and at her inn he had felt no need to, and that the difference was worth more to him than any luxury. When someone asked her secret, she seemed puzzled by the question. "I only treat people the way I would want to be treated," she said. I did not know that was rare. But it was rare, and that was the whole of it. Her honesty had turned a plain roof into a place where the weary could set down far more than their bags. They could set down their guard. We tend to think our actions matter only for what they accomplish. But every honest dealing, every harm not done, every small refusal to take what is not ours, does something quieter as well. It shapes the kind of person we are becoming and the kind of presence we carry into a room. This is part of why the Buddha set action so early on the path, well before the deeper work of steadying and training the mind. A mind cannot grow calm on top of a life full of small wrongs. The regrets keep surfacing. The guard stays up. But when our outward life is clean and harmless, the ground beneath us goes still, and the mind, with nothing left to defend, can begin to settle on its own. Peace is not built only by sitting still. It is built first by living in a way that leaves us nothing to be uneasy about. There is nothing here to take up as a burden, no list to keep. But you might let one small noticing travel with you. Somewhere in the days ahead, a chance will come to take a little more than your share, or to do some small harm, or to bend the truth to your own gain. The chances are usually small and easy to miss. And alongside each one there will be the other choice, to deal honestly, to leave a thing as you found it, to be, for one moment, someone another person does not have to guard against. You do not have to force anything. Just notice how the honest choice feels, how it lets you walk on with nothing trailing behind you. A life made of those small choices becomes, in time, a life with nothing to hide. And a person with nothing to hide carries a peace that no amount of getting could ever buy. And it asks so little of us, really. Not heroics, not perfection, only that we lean, in the small moments, toward the harmless choice and the honest one. The path is not walked in great leaps. It is walked in the ordinary turnings of an ordinary day, each one barely worth noticing on its own, and all of them together slowly shaping the person we become. Let us rest here a moment before we go on. There is nothing to do and nowhere to be. When you are ready, the path continues. Of all the actions that fill a life, there is one set we return to more than any other: the work of our days. Most of us will spend more of our waking hours working than doing anything else, and so the Buddha gave the work itself a step of its own. This is the fifth step of the path: right livelihood. It asks two simple things of the way we earn our living. First, that it does no harm. And second, less obvious but every bit as important, that we bring a living heart to it, instead of letting it become a thing we merely endure. The first part is plain enough. The Buddha taught that some ways of earning a living leave a mark on the one who earns it, work built on deceiving people, or on harming them, or on profiting from their pain. A living got that way feeds the body but unsettles the heart. Honest work, work that leaves the world no worse than it found it, lets us eat our bread in peace. The Buddha named a few kinds of work to step away from, trades that dealt in weapons, or in poisons, or in the deceiving of others, anything whose profit was somebody else's loss. The particulars belong to his time and place, but the principle is timeless and easy enough to feel for ourselves. If the way we make our money asks us to harm, or to lie, or to look away from what we are really doing, some part of us always knows and pays for it quietly. But the second part is the one that quietly changes the most lives, because most of us are not choosing between honest and dishonest work at all. We are simply trying to get through the day. And here the Buddha's teaching turns surprising. It is not only what we do that shapes us, but the heart we bring to it. The same task, done in two different spirits, can be drudgery, or it can be a kind of practice. The work does not change. The one doing it does. Let us explore a story about a traveler who passed a great building site. She was walking through a city where a vast hall was slowly rising from the bare ground, and the road carried her past 3 workers, each doing the very same job. Each one knelt over a block of stone, cutting and shaping it with hammer and chisel. The same work, the same stone, the same sun overhead. She stopped to speak with each of them in turn. To the first, she said, "Friend, what are you doing?" The man did not look up. "What does it look like?" He said wearily, "I am cutting stone. I cut stone all day, and my back aches, and tomorrow I will cut more. That is all this is, and all it will ever be." She walked on to the second worker and asked him the same. "What are you doing?" This man paused and wiped his brow. "I am earning my bread," he said. "I am feeding my family. This stone puts food on my table and keeps a roof over my children. The work is hard, but for that I am grateful." She came to the third worker, who was cutting the very same stone as the others, and asked once more, "And you? What are you doing?" The third man set down his chisel and looked up, and there was something bright in his face. "Me?" he said. "I am helping to raise a great hall. Long after I am gone, people will gather in this place. They will shelter from the rain under a roof I helped to build. Children who are not yet born will stand here one day. I am building something that will outlast me by 1,000 years." He picked up his chisel again, but there was almost a smile on his face as he bent back to the stone. 3 workers, the same stone, the same hammer, the same aching back at the end of the day, and 3 entirely different lives. The third worker's stone was no lighter than the first worker's. His task was every bit as hard, his hours just as long, his back just as sore. What he had that the others did not was not an easier job. It was a larger way of holding the one he had. This is the heart of right livelihood. So much of whether our work fills us or empties us comes down to the heart we carry into it. The same hours can be served grudgingly, with one eye always on the door, or they can be met as something worth doing well. And here is the part we tend to miss. It is not only the grand work that can be loved. It is any work met with care. The Buddha's path does not ask everyone to do important-looking things. Most lives are made of small and ordinary tasks, repeated day after day. But a small task, done with a whole heart, is not a small thing at all. The trouble is that we save our care for the work we judge worthy of it, and run through everything else half present, waiting for it to be over. And so we drift through great stretches of our own lives, awake only for the parts we have decided are important, and absent for all the rest. You can test this in your own life without changing a single thing about it. Think of 2 different ways you have washed a stack of dishes, or walked a familiar road, or sat through a long and ordinary task. On one day it is dead time, something standing between you and where you would rather be, and every minute drags. On another, for no clear reason, you are simply there for it, your hands in the warm water, the light coming through the window, and the very same chore passes like nothing and leaves you strangely settled. Nothing about the dishes changed. Only your presence did. That difference, multiplied across the thousands of ordinary tasks in a life, is the whole difference between a life endured and a life lived. To bring a living heart to whatever work is in front of us, however plain, is to stop waiting for our real life to start somewhere else, and to find it here, in the task our hands are already doing. We put it off because we are so sure the important things are still ahead of us. The real work, the real life, always seems about to begin, just as soon as this dull stretch is behind us. But the dull stretches are not in the way of the life. They are the life, most of it. The person who can be present for the plain hours has found something that the person, forever waiting for better ones, never will. There is a story from the Zen tradition about a monastery cook. A young monk came to a famous monastery high in the mountains, eager to study under its great teachers and learn the deepest secrets of the path. He spent his days in the meditation hall and his evenings listening to the senior monks, searching among them for the wisest one, the one who might finally show him the way. In the kitchen of that monastery there worked an old monk whose only task was to cook for everyone. Day after day he washed the rice, tended the fires, chopped the vegetables, and stirred the great steaming pots. The young monk paid him little mind. The cook was old, and his work was plain, and surely the wisdom he had travelled so far for lay elsewhere, with the teachers and the scholars. One blazing afternoon, the young monk found the old cook outside in the full sun, slowly laying out mushrooms to dry on a woven mat. Sweat ran down the old man's face. The work looked exhausting, and the heat was fierce. "Let one of the young ones do that," the young monk said. "Or at least wait until evening, when it is cool. Why do this now, yourself, in this heat?" The old cook looked up at him. "If not now, when?" he said. "And if not me, who?" And he turned back to his mushrooms, laying out each one with the same care he might give to anything in the world. There was no impatience in him, and no sign that he felt the task beneath the dignity of an old monk. He simply did the thing that was his to do, in the heat that was the day's to give. The young monk stood there a long while after the old man had finished. He had climbed a mountain and searched among its famous teachers for wisdom, and a dozen times a day he had walked straight past it, in the kitchen, where an old man bent over his mushrooms had been showing him, all along, exactly what he came to learn. The old cook was not waiting to do something important. For him, there was no important work and unimportant work. There was only this task, this moment, met fully. Drying mushrooms in the hot sun, with his whole attention, was as much the path as any hour spent sitting in the meditation hall. There is a saying in Zen that holds the whole of it. When walking, just walk. When sitting, just sit. It sounds almost too plain to be wisdom until you try it for an hour and discover how seldom we manage it. When we walk, we are planning. When we sit, we are remembering. We are rarely where our body actually is. The old cook was simply, fully, where he stood, doing what he was doing, and that is a thing most of us taste only in flashes. To keep returning to it, in the middle of plain work, is not some small exercise tacked onto the practice. It is a great deal of the practice itself. The Zen tradition holds the monastery cook in high honor for just this reason. It is easy to be present for the grand and the rare. It is far harder and far more useful to be present for the rice and the fire and the chopping, the small repeated labors that make up the largest part of any life. A path that only worked while you sat in silence would be of little use to most of us, since most of our hours are spent doing other things. The deeper teaching is that no task is too humble to be done with a full heart, and that a full heart turns the humblest task into the practice itself. If not now, when? The old cook's question lands on all of us. We are forever setting our real attention aside for later, for the important moment, for when things finally settle down. But the only moment we are ever actually given is this one, and the work we are actually given is the work right in front of us. To meet it fully is not some lesser practice we settle for. It may be the whole of it, and there is a kindness in it that reaches beyond ourselves. Work done with care tends to be felt by whoever receives it. The meal cooked with attention, the task done thoroughly, the thing made well, all of it carries something of the heart that made it. The old cook was not only walking his own path, he was feeding a whole monastery and feeding it with care. Consider a story about a woman who sold cloth in a busy market. For years she dealt honestly. She named a fair price. She did not hide the flaws in her goods, and her customers trusted her. She was not rich, but she did well enough, and her days sat easy on her. Then one season a chance came her way. She saw how she might pass off a lesser cloth as a finer one, how she might tip the scale just slightly in her own favor, how she might call a thing rarer than it truly was. The profit would be far greater, and who would ever know? She tried it, just once, and it worked. She went home that evening with more coin than she had ever taken in a single day. But something had shifted. The next morning, when her customers came, she could not quite meet their eyes. When one of them praised her honesty, she felt a small cold turn in her stomach. She began to dread the questions a clever buyer might ask. Every footstep at her stall carried a flicker of worry. The extra coin sat in her box, and it did not bring her the ease she had imagined. It had brought her something she had never carried before, a low and constant unease. She had always assumed the cost of cheating would be the danger of being caught. She had not known that the real cost would arrive whether she was caught or not. After a few days of this, she could bear it no longer. She went back to her old way of dealing, fair and plain and honest. She earned less, as before, but the unease lifted and her peace returned, and she could once again look her customers in the eye and call them friends. She had learned, in the simplest way, that some kinds of gain cost far more than they could ever pay. The trader had discovered what the Buddha placed at the root of right livelihood. A living earned by harming or deceiving others does not stay outside us, out in the marketplace where we made it. It follows us home. It settles in the chest. No sum of money is worth carrying that. Most of us, thankfully, are never tempted to anything so plain. But the lesson reaches into smaller corners. We can shade the truth a little to make a sale, or to make a better impression. We can let someone go on believing a thing that is not quite so, because it serves us. And every time, there is a small cost, a faint unease, that honest dealing simply does not carry. The clean way is very often also the lighter way. There is a thread running through all three of these workers, and it is worth drawing out. The honest trader, the old cook, the third builder. What each of them found was that the work was never really the problem. The cloth, the mushrooms, the stone, none of it had to change. What changed everything was the spirit they brought to it, honesty in one, full presence in another, a sense of purpose in the third. The same is true for nearly any work a person can do. It is not waiting to become worthy of our care. It is waiting for our care to arrive. There is nothing here you need to do. But you might let one question travel with you, the old cook's question, carried into your own days. The next time you find yourself at some plain and ordinary task, the kind you usually hurry through just to reach the end of it, you might try meeting it the way the third builder met his stone, or the old cook met his mushrooms. Not as something to be survived, but as the very place your life is happening right now. You may find that the task itself does not change in the slightest, and that everything about doing it does. The hours we wish away are still our hours. There are no others coming to replace them. This ordinary day and this ordinary work is the life we actually have, and it turns out to be enough to hold the whole of the path. And notice where the path has carried us. We began with how we see, then where the heart leans, then how we speak, then how we act, and now how we work. All of it so far has been about the shape of an outward life, the ground we stand on. With that ground laid, honest and harmless and met with care, something becomes possible that was not possible before. A mind no longer tangled in regret or pretense or hollow days grows still enough at last to be looked at directly. That is where the path turns next, inward, toward the training of attention itself. But it could not have started there. A scattered and uneasy life makes poor ground for a steady mind. We have been quietly preparing that ground all along. Let us pause here a moment. Let the body be heavy and the mind unhurried. When you are ready, we will walk on together. We have laid the ground, how we see, where the heart leans, how we speak, how we act, how we work. Now the path turns inward, toward the mind itself, and the very first question it asks there is a simple one. How much effort should we make? This is the sixth step. Right effort. And the answer the Buddha gave is not the one most of us would expect. We tend to assume that if a little effort is good, more must be better, that the way to calm the mind is to bear down on it and force it into stillness. But the mind does not work like that. Bear down on it and it tightens. Force it and it pushes back. The Buddha taught a different kind of effort altogether, one that is less like gripping and more like a steady willingness. Not too tight and not too loose. The Buddha called his whole path the middle way, a road that runs between every pair of extremes, and nowhere is that clearer than in how we are asked to make effort. There are two ways to go wrong. One is to try too hard, to strain and clench, and treat a calm mind as a prize to be seized by force. The other is to drift, to give up all effort and simply float along half-present, waiting for something to happen on its own. Between the straining and the drifting lies a third way, awake but not tense, willing but not forcing. It is more delicate than either extreme, and far more restful than both. It may seem strange that the inward part of the path begins with effort, of all things, when so much of what follows is about letting go. But there is a sense to it. Before we can train attention at all, we have to learn how to apply ourselves to it. And most of us know only one way to apply ourselves, which is to try hard. So the first lesson, before any other, is to unlearn that and to find an effort that does not wear out the one who makes it. Let us explore a story about an archer. He was the finest archer in the province, and when he practiced alone, with nothing at all at stake, his skill was a thing to behold. He drew the bow as easily as drawing breath. The arrow seemed to find the center of the target of its own accord. He did not strain. He hardly seemed to aim. He simply released, and the arrow flew true, every time. One day, a nobleman heard of his gift and invited him to shoot for a prize. The archer agreed. When he arrived, he found a small prize set out, a simple cup of clay, nothing of any real worth. He took up his bow, but now, for the first time, there was something to win. And as he drew, he felt his hand begin to tremble ever so slightly. The thought of the prize had crept in. He released, and the arrow flew a little wide of the center. He still shot well, better than most men could ever hope to. But it was not the effortless thing it had been when he shot for nothing at all. Word of the contest spread, and in time a king heard of it and decided to test the famous archer for himself. This time, the king set out a prize of pure gold, a small fortune, enough to change a person's whole life. The archer took his place. He could see the gold glinting in the sun. He thought of everything it could buy. And as he raised the bow, his hands shook in earnest, and his sight seemed to swim, so that where there had been one target, he now saw two, wavering before his eyes. His breath came short and shallow. When at last he loosed the arrow, it missed the mark by a wide margin, and he stood there astonished at himself. His skill had not left him. His arm was as strong as ever, his eye as sharp, all his years of training still there inside him. Nothing in him had changed, save one thing. He wanted to win, and the wanting had reached in and divided him against himself. When the archer shot for nothing, he had everything. When he shot for gold, he could barely see the target. This is one of the strangest truths about effort, and the Buddha understood it well. The harder we grasp at a result, the more the grasping itself gets in the way. The archer's skill was never the problem. It was the wanting that undid him, the need to win that crept into his hands and set them shaking. We meet this everywhere, once we begin to look. The harder you try to recall a name that sits on the very tip of your tongue, the more stubbornly it hides, until you give up, and a moment later, it floats up on its own. The harder you grip a moment of happiness, anxious to keep it from passing, the faster it seems to slip through your fingers. In each case, the effort is not helping. The effort is the trouble. So when the Buddha asked us to bring effort to the mind, he did not mean this kind. He did not mean the clenched, anxious striving that defeats itself. He meant something steadier and lighter, a willingness to keep showing up, to keep looking, without demanding that anything in particular happen. The archer who shot for nothing was not lazy. He was giving his whole self to the shot. He was simply not grasping at the outcome. And that is the secret hidden in right effort. Full presence, with an open hand. We tend to think of effort and ease as opposites, as though we had to choose between trying and relaxing. But right effort is both at once. It is fully engaged and completely unclenched. You can see it in anyone who is very good at something they love. The skilled cook, the gardener with both hands in the soil, the musician lost in the playing. They are working hard, and they are entirely at ease, and there is no contradiction in it, because they are not grasping at a result. They are simply giving themselves to the thing in front of them. That is the effort the path asks of us. Not less engagement, but less grasping. This is worth remembering whenever life starts to feel like a fight. Often the tiredness we feel comes not from the task itself, but from the grip we have on it, the clenching, the urgency, the silent demand that it turn out a certain way. Loosen that grip, even a little, and the same task can be done with half the weariness. The work was never as heavy as our grip on it. There is a story about an old woman who was a potter and the young apprentice who came to learn from her. The apprentice was eager, and on his first day at the wheel he set to work with all his strength. He pressed his hands hard against the spinning clay, determined to force it into the shape he wanted. But the harder he pressed, the more the clay buckled and slumped, until it collapsed into a useless heap. He scraped it off and tried again, pressing harder still, as though the answer were simply more force. Again it collapsed. The old potter watched without a word. After many ruined lumps of clay, the young man grew discouraged and swung the other way entirely. Now he barely touched the clay at all, afraid to spoil it, resting his hands so lightly upon it that they did nothing. The clay spun on beneath his fingers, wobbling, formless. Nothing rose. Nothing took shape. At last the old woman came and sat beside him. She wet her hands and laid them on a fresh lump of clay as it turned. "Watch," she said. "Not so hard that you crush it. Not so soft that you leave no mark on it. Here, feel it." She guided his hands beneath her own, and he felt it then, for the first time, the living middle, a pressure that was firm and gentle at once, steady but not forcing. It was less like fighting the clay now, and more like listening to it. Under that touch, the clay neither fought nor wobbled. It rose, smooth and willing, climbing into the shape of a bowl, as though it had wanted to all along. "There," she said. "You were not too weak before, and now you are not too strong. You have found the place between. That place is where everything is made." The clay asked of the apprentice exactly what the mind asks of us. Not force and not neglect, but a balanced, living attention that holds without gripping. This is the heart of right effort, and it is why the path is called a middle way. Too much effort, and we tense, and the very tension scatters the calm we were reaching for. Too little, and we drift, and nothing deepens. The art is in the place between, and like the potter's touch, it cannot truly be taught in words. It has to be felt. You learn it by overshooting in both directions, gripping too hard, then going slack, until your hands find the middle on their own. And here is something worth knowing. That middle is not a knife edge you must balance upon with great care, holding your breath. It is far more forgiving than that. You will drift too tight and notice and ease off. You will drift too loose and notice and firm up again. The noticing and the easing over and over is itself the practice. No one holds the perfect middle all the time. The whole skill is only in coming back to it again and again without making a fuss about having wandered. There is a kindness owed to ourselves in this. We are quick to treat a wandering mind as a failure, as proof that we are no good at any of this. But a mind wanders. That is simply what a mind does. The wandering is not the problem, and fighting it only lays a second strain on top of the first. The whole of the skill is the return, made lightly, without reproach. A mind brought back 10,000 times, kindly, each time, is not a failed practice. It is the practice exactly as it was always meant to be. You can feel the difference in your own body. A mind that tries too hard has a tightness to it, a faint ache of concentration, a held breath. A mind gone slack has a fog to it, a heaviness, a dull drift into nothing. Between them is a state that is alert and soft at the same time, clear and unhurried, the body at rest and the attention awake. That is the feel to look for. Once you have tasted it, even briefly, you can find your way back to it. There is a story about two friends who set out to find water in a dry land. There was no river near, and the wells they needed they would have to dig themselves. So each chose a spot in the parched earth and began. The first, a man, was full of energy. He dug a hole, and when he had gone down a little way and found only dry earth, he grew impatient and decided he had chosen the wrong place. So he moved a few paces over and started a new hole. When that one too showed no water after a while, he moved again and dug again. Day after day he dug, here and there and everywhere, until the field was pocked with shallow pits, his arms aching and his spirit sinking. And never once did he reach water, because he never stayed in any one place long enough to go deep. The second, a woman, chose her spot and stayed with it. Each day she went down a little further. Some days the digging was easy. Some days she struck hard clay and gained only a hand's width before nightfall. There were days she doubted, days when the dry earth gave no sign of water at all. But she did not move. She simply returned to the same well each morning and dug a little deeper than the day before. She did not hurry and she did not stop. She trusted the ground and she trusted the digging, and she let the slow days do their slow work. And one afternoon, far down in the cool dark of that single deepening well, her spade broke through into wet earth, and water began to rise around her feet. She had found it not by digging harder than her friend, nor by digging more. She had turned far less ground than he had. She had only kept returning to the same place, and let the one well grow deep. The man worked himself to exhaustion and found nothing. The woman, who never strained, reached the water because she kept coming back to the same place. This is the other face of right effort, the part that is not about how hard, but about how steady. The Buddha spoke of effort as having a few different moments to it. There is the effort that first sets us out, the willingness to begin at all. There is the effort that meets the hard stretches, the dry days, the times we strike clay and doubt there is any water down there to find. And there is the quietest and most important kind, the willingness to simply keep returning, day after day, when nothing dramatic is happening and the work has become plain and unremarkable. Most of us understand the first kind well enough. We are good at beginning. It is the returning we find hard. We dig a little, see no quick result, and move on to a new spot, a new method, a new resolution, scattering our effort across 100 shallow holes. But almost anything worth reaching is reached the woman's way, by staying, by deepening one place rather than skimming many. And there is great encouragement in this if we let it land. It means we do not need bursts of heroic willpower, the kind that flares up and burns out within a week. We need only the small, repeatable return, the kind anyone can manage on an ordinary day. A little, come back to faithfully, will outlast and outreach a great deal, done once and then abandoned. The water is reached not by the strongest digger, but by the one who keeps coming back. Whatever you are reaching for, in practice or in life, it is almost certainly nearer the patient well than the field of shallow holes. And notice what that returning actually is. It is not strain. The woman did not wrench the water out of the ground by force. She simply came back and came back and came back. That patient returning, repeated without drama, is the whole of right effort. And it is also, as we are about to see, the very heart of what comes next on the path. For the act of coming back, again and again, to the thing in front of us has a name. It is called mindfulness. There is nothing here to take up as a labor, but you might carry a small noticing into the days ahead. The next time you find yourself straining at something, trying to force a feeling, or force a result, or force your own mind to be other than it is, you might remember the archer and the potter's hands and experiment with easing off, not into giving up, but into that living middle, firm and open at once. And the next time you are tempted to abandon something because it has not borne fruit quickly enough, you might remember the patient well and simply return to it one more time. Most things do not yield to force. They yield to a steady, unhurried returning. The mind is no different. None of this is a thing to master tonight or this week. It is a feel you grow into slowly, over many small tries. Be as patient with your own effort as the woman was with her well. Ease off where you have been forcing. Return where you have been giving up. And trust that the right amount, neither too tight nor too loose, will show itself in time, as it always does, to anyone willing to keep coming back to the wheel. Let us be still a moment here. Notice, without changing anything, how much effort you are making just to be here, listening, and see whether a little of it can be set down. When you are ready, we will go on together. We ended on a single phrase. Coming back. The willingness to return again and again to the thing in front of us. That returning is the doorway into the seventh step of the path, and in many ways its very center. Right mindfulness. Mindfulness is one of those words that has been used so often it has nearly worn smooth. So let us say plainly what it meant to the Buddha. It is simply this: to be present for your own life as it is actually happening. To meet each moment as it truly is, rather than lost in the one that just passed or the one that has not yet come. It sounds like the easiest thing in the world. It is among the hardest. Stop for a moment and notice where your mind has been today. How much of the day did you actually inhabit? And how much Did you spend somewhere else, rehearsing a conversation, replaying an old scene, planning, worrying, drifting from one thought to the next? Most of us pass a startling amount of our lives, a single step removed from them, present in body but absent in mind. Mindfulness is the slow art of closing that gap, of actually being where we already are. And mindfulness is not the same as thinking about the moment, or analyzing it, or narrating it to ourselves. Those are only more thought. It is something more direct than that, a bare noticing that comes before words. The feel of a cup in your hand before you have cooled it warm. The sound of rain before you have decided whether you like it. Mindfulness lives in that first plain contact with things, the moment before the mind begins adding to them. The Buddha described it as having two parts. The first is not letting the moment slip by unnoticed, staying with it instead of being swept off. The second is a kind of seeing into, meeting the moment closely enough that we begin to understand it. We will come to both, but mindfulness starts with something simpler than either. It starts with coming back. Let us explore a story about a young monk who could not keep his mind from wandering. He had come to the monastery to learn to settle his mind, and each day he sat in meditation with the others, and each day the same thing befell him. A particular daydream would arise, a pleasant one, of a different life he might have lived, and it would carry him clean away. He would surface a long while later to find that he had been lost in it for most of the sitting, and he would be furious with himself. So he began to fight it. Each time the daydream rose up, he pushed it down, scolded himself, tried to force it from his mind. But the harder he fought, the stronger it seemed to grow, and the more often it returned, until his meditation had become nothing but a long, losing battle with a daydream he could not defeat. One evening, worn out with fighting, he went to an old monk who had practiced many years and told him the whole trouble. The old monk listened and then said something that surprised him. "Do not fight it," he said. "The next time it comes, do not push it away at all. Just notice it. And notice, in particular, how it feels. Notice that it is pleasant. Say to yourself, simply, pleasant. And keep watching." The young monk thought this strange advice, but he was tired enough to try anything. The next time he sat, the daydream arose, as it always did. But this time he did not fight it. He turned toward it instead, and he noticed, as he had been told, how pleasant it was. "Pleasant," he said to himself, and he kept watching it with a kind of friendly interest, the way you might watch a cloud cross the sky. And something he had not expected happened. Seen plainly like that, named for what it was, the daydream lost its grip. It did not need to be pushed away. Once he simply saw it clearly and felt the pleasantness in it without being swept off by that pleasantness, the whole thing loosened on its own and drifted apart, and he was sitting once more in the still evening room, present, awake, with nothing left to fight. The young monk had been trying to win his freedom by force, and it had only bound him tighter. What finally set him free was not a harder push. It was a clearer look. And the place he looked is worth understanding, because it is one of the most useful things the Buddha ever pointed out. The monk's freedom turned on a single hinge, and that hinge was feeling. Not emotion, exactly, but the plain tone of an experience. Whether it is pleasant, unpleasant, or neither. Here is why it matters. Something arises, a thought, a sensation, a daydream. Before we quite know what is happening, we are pulled, either chasing the thing because it feels good or shoving it away because it feels bad. But between the thing arising and our being pulled by it, there is a small gap, and in that gap sits the feeling tone. The daydream felt pleasant, and that pleasantness was the hook. The young monk had been trying to fight the daydream itself, at the far end of the chain, where it had already grown strong. The old monk showed him how to slip in earlier, right at the feeling, and simply see it. Pleasant. Just that. And seen clearly at that early point, the feeling did not harden into wanting, and the whole chain came undone before it could pull. This is mindfulness at its most practical. We are not asked to wrestle our thoughts and moods into submission. We are asked only to see them clearly, and especially to notice their feeling tone before it sweeps us off. A craving noticed is a craving already loosening. An aversion seen plainly has already lost half its force. Almost everything that pulls us about does so in the dark. Bring a clear, unhurried attention to it. Name its flavor, pleasant, unpleasant, or neither, and much of its hold quietly comes apart. There are two ways our attention can meet an experience. It can bob along the surface, like a cork riding on top of the water, touching everything and sinking into nothing. Or it can sink in, as a stone drops down through the water and comes to rest on the bottom. Most of our attention is cork. We skim. We half notice 100 things and truly meet none of them. Mindfulness is attention that sinks in, that stays long enough to actually feel what is here. You can try it with the most ordinary thing. The next time you drink a cup of tea, see if you can be there for the first sip, as fully as the stone settling, the warmth, the taste, the steam rising, with nothing else running underneath. It is harder than it sounds, and stranger, because most of us have never once drunk a cup of tea without thinking of something else the whole time. Once you start watching for the feeling tone, you begin to see it running underneath everything. A small pleasantness, and you reach for more. A small unpleasantness, and you flinch and push away. All day long, 1,000 tiny reachings and flinchings, mostly unseen, quietly steering the whole of us. Simply to notice them, pleasant, unpleasant, is to take back a little of the steering. Not by fighting anything, only by seeing. There is a story from the Zen tradition about a seeker who came to a famous teacher. She had traveled a long way, and she asked him to write down for her the highest wisdom he knew, something she could keep and live by. The teacher took up his brush and wrote a single word: attention. She looked at it and felt let down. She had come so far and expected something grander. "Is that all?" she asked. "Could you not add something more to it?" So the teacher took up his brush again, and beside the first word he wrote the same word a second time. "Attention. Attention." She frowned. "I do not understand," she said. "What does that even mean? It hardly seems like wisdom at all." The teacher set down his brush. "Attention," he said, "means attention." And that was all he would say. She left puzzled, even a little disappointed. But the word stayed with her, and over the years that followed, as she lived her life and watched her own mind, it slowly opened for her. She came to see that nearly everything that had ever gone wrong in her, the worry, the regret, the small unkindnesses, the moments she had missed and could not get back, had grown up in the places where her attention had not been, and nearly everything good and clear in her had come in the moments when it had. The teacher had handed her the whole of it in a single word, written twice. She had simply needed a life to understand it. The teacher was not being clever or withholding something deeper. He meant it exactly. Attention, brought to this moment and then to the next, is very nearly the whole of the path made simple. But attention needs somewhere to rest, or it scatters. And so, the Buddha gave it a few homes to return to, places where it can set itself down. The first and easiest is the body. Whatever else is happening, the body is always here, always now. The breath moving in and out. The weight of you against whatever holds you up. The small sounds in the room, the touch of the air on your skin. These things are not exciting, and that is exactly their worth. They are always available, always present, and they ask nothing of you but to be noticed. Whenever the mind has wandered off into the past or the future, the body is the doorway back into now. You cannot breathe in yesterday. You cannot feel tomorrow's warmth on your hands. The body lives only here, and so, to return to it is to return to the present. This is why so many ways of training the mind begin with the breath. Not because there is anything holy about breathing, but because it is the one thing always with us, always moving, always now. It makes a reliable home. When you are lost, you can find it again in an instant. It is the anchor that does not drift. And once attention can rest steadily like this, the second quality the Buddha named begins to grow on its own. The seeing into. It is not enough only to keep the moment from slipping past. In time, attention that stays grows able to see more deeply into what it rests on, to notice how things actually arise and pass, how no feeling lasts, how even the thoughts that seemed so solid are little more than passing weather. This deeper seeing is not forced. It ripens by itself, simply from staying present long enough, much as your eyes slowly adjust in a dark room until you can make out what was there all along. From that home base, attention naturally widens. Having steadied on the body, it can notice the feeling tone of things, pleasant or unpleasant, as the young monk learned to do. It can notice the passing weather of the mind, the moods that drift in and out like changing skies. But none of it asks for force. It is all just attention, resting first on the body, and from there meeting whatever arises. Attention. Attention. The teacher really had said all of it. Consider a story about a man who wished to study with a great teacher. He had heard that she was the wisest teacher in the land, and he traveled far to reach her, certain that he was ready to learn the deepest things. He arrived on a rainy day, left his umbrella and his sandals at the entrance, as was the custom, and went in to meet her. They greeted one another, and after a few words, the teacher asked him a simple question. "When you came in just now," she said, "did you set your umbrella down to the left of your sandals or to the right?" The man opened his mouth to answer and found that he could not. He had no idea. He had set them down only a moment before, and already it was gone from him. He had walked in thinking of the great teacher he was about to meet, of the wise things he might say, of the impression he hoped to make. And so he had not been there at all for the small, plain act of setting down his own umbrella. It was such a small thing. And that was exactly the point. If he could not be present for that, how could he hope to be present for anything larger? And in that moment he understood, with some humility, that he was not nearly so ready as he had believed. He had come to learn the highest wisdom, and he could not yet manage to be present for the lowest doorstep. He bowed and asked if he might stay and begin at the very beginning. The beginning, he was learning, was simply this: to actually be where you are, even for something as small as a pair of sandals in a doorway. We smile at the man in the doorway, but he is each of us. How much of today did we set down somewhere and lose at once because we were a step ahead of ourselves the whole time, already somewhere else? The good news is that mindfulness asks nothing rare of us. It needs no mountain, no teacher, no years of silence. It asks only that we return, now and then, to where we actually are. And there is a deep relief hidden in this, because the present moment, when we finally arrive in it, is almost always more bearable than the swirl of thought we left in order to get here. The mind's worry lives in the future. Its regret lives in the past. The present, the actual sensations of this actual moment, is usually and surprisingly fine. To come back to it is to step out of the storm and onto solid ground. You can prove this to yourself in almost any difficult moment. When you are anxious, notice that the fear is nearly always about something that is not actually happening yet, a future scene. The mind is busy rehearsing. Then come back to the room you are really in, the chair beneath you, the light, the breath, and notice that in this exact moment, the one you are truly living, you are most likely safe and whole and able to bear what is here. The suffering was in the story, not in the second. This does not make hard things easy, but it returns us to the only place where we have ever actually been able to meet anything, which is here and now. There is nothing you need to do with this. But here and there, in an ordinary day, you might simply notice where you are. Feel your own hands. Hear the sound that is happening right now. Notice the breath you are actually breathing. You will be gone again within a moment, carried off by some thought, and that is no failure at all. The whole of it is only to come back, kindly, without scolding yourself, as many times as it takes. That coming back, repeated across a life, is mindfulness. And it is most of the way home. And the coming back matters far more than the staying. You will not stay. No one stays. The mind was made to move, and it will carry you off 1,000 times in an hour. The practice was never to stop that. It was only to return, kindly, each time you notice you have gone, with no scolding and no sense of failure. Each return is complete in itself. Each one is the whole practice, beginning to end. You do not even need to set aside special time for it, though you may. An ordinary day is full of doorways back, waiting for water to boil, walking from one room into another, the small pause before you speak. Each is a chance to arrive, to feel your feet, to take one breath you actually notice. Strung together over time, these small returns slowly change the whole texture of a life. Not by adding anything to it, but by letting you finally be present for the life that was already yours. Let us rest here a moment. There is nowhere to get to and nothing to figure out. Just this breath and then the next one. When you are ready, we will take the last steps of the path together. We come now to the last step of the path, right concentration. And it is less a new thing to learn than the natural ripening of everything that came before it. Think back to what mindfulness was. Coming back, again and again, to the present. At first, the mind scatters constantly, and we spend most of our effort simply returning. But something happens if we keep at it without strain. The returns grow closer together. The wandering grows shorter, and little by little the mind begins to stay, to settle, to gather itself into one place instead of a dozen. That gathered steadiness is concentration. It is what a scattered mind becomes when it is no longer pulled in every direction at once. We should be careful with the word, because it carries the wrong feeling for most of us. When we hear concentration, we picture a furrowed brow, the strain of a hard problem, an effortful focus that leaves us worn out. But the concentration the Buddha pointed to is almost the opposite of that. It is not tense. It is among the most restful states a mind can know. A gathered mind is not a clenched mind. It is simply an undivided one. All of its energy, usually scattered across 100 worries and wants, flows together into a single, clear stream. There is an image that helps. Sunlight falls across a whole field, and it warms the ground a little, but it is spread thin and does nothing in particular. Gather that same light through a single lens onto one small point, and it grows strong enough to kindle a flame. Nothing was added. The light was only gathered. The mind is much the same. Scattered across everything, it accomplishes little and tires quickly. Gathered to one point, that very same mind becomes clear and strong and still. And this is not some exotic state kept for mystics on mountaintops. You have almost certainly tasted it already. Anyone who has been so absorbed in something they loved that they forgot the time, forgot to eat, forgot themselves entirely, has touched the edge of it. A child at play. A craftsman bent over the bench. A reader so lost in a book that the whole room falls away. In those moments, the scattered mind gathers without being told to, drawn together by simple interest, and there is a particular contentment in it that we rarely find any other way. The path only asks whether we might learn to cultivate, on purpose, the gathering those moments hand us by accident. The Buddha once taught this with the image of a bowl of oil, and the story has been told ever since. Imagine, he said, a great festival. The whole town has poured into the streets. There is music and dancing, and a famous singer whose voice is so lovely that people have traveled from far away just to hear her. The roads are crowded and loud, full of color and movement and every kind of distraction. Now imagine that a man must carry a bowl through the middle of all this. The bowl is filled with oil, filled right to the very brim, so full that the smallest jolt would send it spilling over the edge. And the king has made him a promise. If he can carry the bowl from one end of the festival to the other without spilling a single drop, he will be given his freedom and a great reward. So the man sets out. And think of what that walk asks of him. He cannot glance at the dancers. He cannot turn toward the famous singer, however beautiful her voice. He cannot be startled by the crowds or pulled along by the music. Every last part of his attention must rest on the surface of the oil, keeping it level, step after careful step, the whole way across. And he does it. He arrives at the far side with the bowl still full, not one drop spilled. Afterward, someone asks him about the festival. What did you make of the dancers? Was the singer as wonderful as they say? And the man looks puzzled. I do not know, he says. I saw none of it. I saw nothing at all. There was only the oil. He was not being modest, and he was not being dull. He truly had not seen the festival, because his whole mind had been gathered onto one thing, and a mind gathered onto one thing has no room left over for anything else. This is what the Buddha meant by a gathered mind. Not a mind clamped down by force, but a mind so fully here, so undivided, that the thousand pulls of the world simply find nothing to take hold of. The man with the bowl was not fighting the festival. He was not gritting his teeth against the music. He was simply so completely with the oil that the festival could not reach him. The distractions did not need to be defeated. There was just no room for them. And notice, this is a kind of peace, though it might not look like one from the outside. We tend to assume that to be at ease we need fewer demands, a quieter room, an emptier day. But the man found a deep stillness in the very middle of a festival, simply because his mind was whole and pointed in a single direction. The noise was all around him, and none of it was in him. A gathered mind carries its own stillness, wherever it goes. Most of our days are the opposite of that bowl. We are doing one thing and thinking of three others. We eat while reading. We listen while planning our reply. We lie down to rest with tomorrow already running through our heads. The mind is split into pieces, each piece pulling a different way, and that division is itself a kind of low, steady tiredness, so familiar that we have long stopped noticing it. To gather the mind, even for a few moments, onto one single thing, is to feel that division begin to heal, and to taste how restful a whole mind can be. It is strange, when you think about it, that doing one thing should be more restful than doing nothing. But a mind doing nothing is seldom truly doing nothing. It is usually doing everything at once, drifting among regret and worry and plan and complaint, and that is exhausting work. However, still the body sits. The man with the bowl looked busy and was deeply at rest. We often look idle and are secretly worn ragged by our own minds. To gather the mind onto one thing is, oddly, a way of giving it a rest. There is a story about a restless young woman who longed for a still mind. She had heard of an old teacher who lived high in the hills, said to have the stillest mind of anyone alive, and she climbed all the way up to him and begged him to teach her his secret. Her own mind, she said, never stopped. It leapt from thought to thought like a grasshopper, all day and half the night, and it wore her out. Would he not give her some powerful method to force it quiet? The old man listened, and then he gave her no powerful method at all. He gave her a candle. Each evening, he said, light this and set it before you, and simply watch the flame. That is all. When your mind wanders off, and it will, bring it back to the flame. Do not scold it. Do not force anything. Only keep returning as easily as you can to the light. She was disappointed. It seemed far too simple to be worth the climb. But she had come a long way, so she did as he said. The first evening was almost unbearable. Her mind bolted from the flame 100 times in the first few minutes, off to her worries, her plans, her irritation at how dull this exercise was. 100 times she brought it back. But she kept at it, evening after evening. And slowly, so slowly she hardly noticed it happening, something began to change. The bolting grew less frequent. The mind began to rest on the flame a little longer each time before it strayed. And as she watched that small, steady flame, night after night, standing straight and unwavering in the still air of the room, her own mind began, without her forcing it at all, to take on something of the same quality, to stand a little straighter, to waver a little less. Months later, she came back down the hill, and the teacher saw it in her face at once. "You found it," he said. "I did," she said. "But you tricked me. You let me believe I would have to do something difficult. All I ever did was keep coming back to a candle." "Yes," the old man said, smiling. "That was the difficult thing, and it was the only thing." The young woman had come looking for a way to force her mind still, and what she found instead was a way to let it grow still, which is a very different thing. This is the secret at the center of right concentration, and it is an easy one to miss. We cannot make the mind gathered by an act of force, any more than we can force a seed to sprout or force a flower to open. What we can do is offer the conditions and keep returning and let the steadiness gather on its own. The candle did not make her mind still. Her patient returning to it did, evening after evening, until at last steadiness was no longer something she had to do, but something she had quietly become. And there is a truth hidden in the story that the Buddha taught plainly. Watch a steady flame long enough, and something in you steadies. Sit often enough beside stillness, and you grow still. We come, in some slow and wordless way, to resemble whatever we give our attention to most. The young woman watched a calm flame each night until her own mind learned, at last, how to be one. This is also why concentration comes at the end of the path and not the beginning. It is not the first effort but the final ripening. It grows out of the willingness to be present that mindfulness teaches, which grows out of the balanced effort before it, which rests upon the honest and harmless life beneath that, which begins in how we see and where the heart leans. You do not arrive at a gathered mind by attacking it head-on. It comes quietly, almost as a gift, once everything beneath it is in place. The gathered mind is not seized. It is grown. There is real relief in hearing this, for anyone who has ever tried to quiet the mind and felt they were failing at it. Perhaps you were trying to force a still mind into being, and growing frustrated that it would not come. But it was never going to come that way. It comes as the young woman's did, by gentle return, repeated kindly over time, with no demand that this be the moment it finally works. Drop the demand, keep the returning, and the steadiness arrives on its own schedule, which is always slower than we would like and surer than we expect. There is an old image, told in more than one tradition, about two travelers and a pool of muddy water. They had been walking a long hot day, and they were parched. At last they came upon a small pond at the side of the road. But just before them a herd of oxen had crossed it, churning the bottom, and the water was thick and brown with stirred-up mud, not fit to drink. The first traveler, desperate with thirst, knelt at the edge and began to scoop at the water with his hands, trying to clear it, reaching and stirring and grasping after some clean water somewhere in it. But the more he stirred, the muddier it grew, and the more hopeless his thirst became. His companion, an older woman who had walked many roads, laid a hand on his shoulder. "Stop," she said. "You cannot clear it that way. The more you reach for it, the worse it gets. Come, sit with me. Rest a while and let it be." He did not understand, but he was too tired to argue, so he sat down beside her in the shade and let his hands be still. They rested. They talked a little of the day, and as they sat there, doing nothing at all to the water, the mud began to settle. Slowly, on its own, with no one touching it, the heavy mud sank toward the bottom, and the water above it grew clear, and clearer still, until at last it was clean enough to drink. "There," the old woman said. "It was never the reaching that cleared it. It was the letting be." The mind is a great deal like that pond, stirred up by the day, churned by wanting and worrying and 100 small agitations. It turns cloudy, and we cannot see clearly through it. And our instinct, like the first travelers, is to reach in and fix it, to grab at our thoughts, to force the clarity we are after. But the mind does not clear by grasping. It clears as the pond does, by being allowed to settle. This is the gentlest face of concentration, and perhaps the truest. We do not have to do anything dramatic to gather the mind. We have, in a sense, only to stop stirring it, to sit and let be, and allow the mud of the day to sink slowly to the bottom of its own accord. And when it does, the mind that remains is not a forced or effortful thing at all. It is clear and gathered and at rest, simply because we finally stop disturbing it. This is where the 8 steps of the path have been quietly leading all along. Not toward some far-off, hard-won state, but toward a mind that has stopped fighting itself and grown clear and come to rest. A way of seeing, a leaning of the heart, an honest and harmless life, a balanced effort, a returning attention, and at last, a gathered stillness. They were never really 8 separate things. They were always one whole way of living, settling, like the pond, into peace. And there is one last gift in a settled mind, beyond its own quiet. Still water shows a clear reflection. Stirred water shows nothing at all. In the same way, a gathered, settled mind can finally see itself, and see things as they truly are, in a way a churning mind never can. So we end where we began, with seeing. The clear sight that the path opened with, at the very first step, is what a gathered mind at last makes possible. The circle closes. The way of seeing and the gathered stillness turn out to be 2 ends of one single thing. There is nothing here you need to make happen. But you might notice, in the days ahead, the difference between a scattered mind and a gathered one, and how each of them feels. Somewhere tomorrow you will be doing one plain thing while your mind is off doing 5 others. And you might, just once, gather yourself and do only the thing you are doing. Wash the one cup. Walk the one road. Listen to the one person in front of you with your whole attention, as the man carried his one bowl of oil. You may find that the task grows easier and oddly lighter, and that for those few moments the low background noise of a divided mind falls silent. That is the gathered mind. It is not far away, and it was never meant only for monks on mountaintops. It is there in any moment you are willing to give yourself to, whole. You may be surprised how seldom you do this, and how good it feels when you do. We spend so much of life half here, that to be fully present for even one small task can feel like stepping out into a clearing. There is no need to make a discipline of it. Just now and then, when you happen to remember, give one thing your whole self, and notice the quiet that arrives when the rest of the mind, for once, has nowhere else it needs to be. Let us be still here a little while. Nothing to reach for, nothing to clear, only letting things settle on their own, in their own time. When you are ready, we will come to the end of the path together. We have come to the end of the path. 8 steps, walked one after another. a way of seeing, a leaning of the heart, honest speech, harmless action, work met with care, balanced effort, a returning attention, and a gathered stillness. But here, at the very end, there is one last thing to see, and it may be the most important of all. You might be imagining, after all of this, that the path is something still ahead of you, a long road yet to be walked, a destination to reach, a peace waiting at the far end of it if only you climb high enough, or sit long enough, or try hard enough. And that is the one misunderstanding the Buddha most wanted to undo. The 8 steps were never a ladder up out of your life. They were a description of your life, lived well. They do not ask you to go anywhere at all. They ask only that you meet the days you already have with clearer eyes, a kinder heart, honest words, harmless hands, and a steadier mind. The path runs straight through the kitchen and the workplace and the ordinary evening. It is not waiting somewhere on a mountain. It is here, beneath your feet, exactly where you happen to be standing. Look back, for a moment, at the shape of what we have walked. The first steps were about how we live in the world, our seeing, our intentions, our speech, our actions, our work, the solid ground beneath our feet. The middle steps were about how we walk, the effort we bring, the attention we keep, the way we meet each passing moment. And the last opened into how the mind itself can settle and grow clear. Ground and walking and clear sight. The Buddha taught these not as 3 separate things but as one, a single life met with a little more wakefulness. No part of it stands alone. The honest life makes the calm mind possible, and the calm mind makes the clear seeing possible, and the clear seeing softens, in turn, how we live. Each step quietly holds up all the others. There is an old story, told in many lands, that says this better than any teaching could. A poor man lived in a small house at the edge of a town, and he had been poor his whole life. One night he had a vivid dream. In it, a voice told him that if he traveled to a great and distant city and stood upon a certain bridge there, he would find a treasure that would change everything. The dream came again the next night, and the next, until at last he could not ignore it. So he set out. He walked for many weeks, over hills and across rivers, through hunger and hardship, all the long way to the far city. And when he arrived, he found the bridge from his dream, exactly as he had seen it. But there was no treasure on the bridge. There was only a guard standing watch. The poor man lingered there, day after day, not knowing what else to do, until at last the guard grew curious and asked him what he was about. Embarrassed, the man confessed the whole story. The dream, the voice, the long journey, the treasure he had crossed the world to find. The guard laughed out loud. "Dreams," he said. "What foolishness to chase one so far. Why, I myself have had a dream, 3 nights running. A voice told me that in a town I have never even visited, in a small house at its edge, beneath the hearth of some poor man, there lies a buried treasure. But you do not see me wandering off across the world after it." And he went on to describe the town and the house, without the faintest idea that he was describing the poor man's own home. The poor man thanked him and turned and walked all the long way back. And when he reached his own small house, he lifted the stones of his own hearth, the cold hearth he had sat beside, poor, his whole life. And there, buried beneath it, just where the guard's dream had said, he found the treasure. It had been under his feet the entire time, He had crossed the world only to be sent home. He had to travel to the ends of the earth to discover that what he was seeking had been beneath his own hearth all along. This is the last and gentlest teaching of the path. The peace you have been looking for is not in some far country. It is not in a better life than this one, a calmer life, a life you will finally reach once everything is fixed and settled. It is here, in this life, the ordinary one, beneath the very floor you are standing on. The whole long journey of the path leads, in the end, right back to where you began. The only difference is that now you can see what was always there. There is a kind of wealth in seeing this, and it is not the wealth the man dug up from beneath his hearth. It is the quiet wealth of enough. So much of our restlessness comes from the sense that this, here, now, is not yet it, that the real life is still somewhere up ahead, that we will be at peace later, once we have more, or once we have arrived somewhere better. The path ends by gently taking that belief apart. There is no later. There was only ever this, the life you are already in, which turns out to be enough to hold the whole of the way, and enough to be at peace inside, exactly as it is. And what was always there is this, a life that is moving, always moving, each moment arising and passing and giving way to the next, like a river that has been flowing the whole time you stood on its bank, wondering how on earth to reach the sea. You were never apart from it. You are made of the same moving water. There is nothing to clutch and nowhere you need to get to, and that is not a loss. It is the deepest relief there is. You can stop holding on. You can let the current carry you. It was always going to, and it always knew the way. This is the seeing the whole path was quietly working toward. Not a fact to be believed, but a felt loosening, the moment you stop bracing against a life that was never your enemy, and let yourself be a part of it. The grasping eases, the fear grows softer, and what is left, underneath all the striving, is something that was there before any of it began, a deep and simple okayness, the ground the whole path rests upon and returns to. There is a smaller story that says the same thing and says it lightly. A pilgrim was walking a long road toward a famous mountain temple, and he was tired and no longer sure he was even going the right way. He came upon an old woman resting by the roadside, and he asked her, "How much further to the temple? How long until I finally arrive?" She looked up at him and said only, "Just keep walking." He felt she had brushed him off, and he grumbled to himself and turned to go on his way. But he had taken only a few steps when she called softly after him. "There you go," she said. And he understood. There had never been a separate moment of arriving, somewhere up ahead. The walking was the thing itself. He had been on the temple grounds with his very first step, and with every step since, and had only been too busy staring at the horizon to notice that he was already there. You do not have to arrive anywhere. You are already on the path. You stepped onto it the moment you began to live with a little more care, and you walk it with every small return to kindness, to honesty, to presence, to this breath, this moment, this plain task in front of you, and no step of it is ever wasted. Even the wandering, even the days you forget the path entirely and lose yourself in worry or in hurry, even those are not failures. The moment you notice, you are already back. There is no falling away from this path that a single breath of attention cannot return you to. That is why it can be walked by anyone, in any life, however imperfect. It asks only for the next small turning, and it is endlessly forgiving of the ones we miss. And it asks so little of us. Not perfection, not some grand transformation into another kind of person. Only the small turnings made again and again. A truer word here, a kinder choice there, a moment of really being where you are, a mind brought back once more without reproach. None of it is dramatic. All of it together is the whole of the way. You do not have to become someone else to walk it. You have only to be who you already are, a little more awake, a little more kind, a little more here. So we come to the end of our time together. Tonight we have walked the whole of the path the Buddha laid down, all 8 steps of it, not as a set of rules to obey, but as 8 simple qualities that grow together over a lifetime into a peaceful and well-lived life. A clear way of seeing, a heart that leans toward kindness, honest speech, harmless action, work done with care, a balanced effort, a returning attention, a gathered and settled mind. You do not need to remember any of it. You do not need to carry any of it away or get a single part of it right. Nothing was asked of you tonight but to listen, and that willingness, that simple turning of the heart towards something good, was itself already a step on the path. You have been walking it all along. There will be hard nights ahead, and days that pull you in 100 directions, and long stretches where you forget every word of this. That is no matter. The path does not need to be remembered to be walked. It lives in the small choices, not in the ideas about them. Be kind where you can. Tell the truth. Do no harm. Come back to where you are. Let the mind settle when it has been stirred. That is the whole of it, and it is enough, and it is always within reach, beginning again with the very next moment. May your days be unhurried. May your heart be light. May you meet whatever comes with clear eyes and an open hand. And may you find, more and more, that the peace you have been seeking was here, beneath your own feet, the whole time. Rest now. Let the mind grow still, like a candle flame in a windless room, like a pond settling clear. There is nothing left to do, and nowhere left to go. Whatever the day behind you held, you can set it down now. It is complete. Tomorrow will ask for you when it comes, and not a moment before. For now, there is only this stillness, and the breath moving softly in and out, and a mind growing quiet on its own, as the whole long path always meant for it to. And now there is nothing left to understand, nothing left to follow. You can let the words go. You have carried them far enough, and they will keep without you. If your eyes have already closed, let them stay closed. If you drifted off somewhere in the last hour and missed the rest, it does not matter in the slightest. You were never meant to hold on to every word. You were only ever meant to be here, and you have been. That is enough. Let everything you have heard sink down now, beneath your thinking, past the reach of all effort, where it can quietly become a part of you on its own, with nothing more required of you tonight. Feel the weight of yourself, given over completely to whatever holds you. Notice how the body, once you stop carrying it, grows heavy and warm and slow. There is a deep and simple comfort in it, this sinking, this being held. Let your face go slack. Let your hands fall open. Let the small muscles around your eyes, the ones that have worked all the long day, come finally to rest. Let the day loosen its hold and float free of you as a far shore slips away from a boat at dusk, smaller and softer, until you can no longer quite make it out. The week behind you too. The things you meant to do and did not. The conversations you keep turning over. Let them all thin and drift, like smoke off a low fire, until they are gone, and there is only the warm dark and the slow tide of your own breath, rising and falling without any help from you. You have done enough. Truly, more than enough, today and on all the days before it. For these last hours there is nothing to fix and nothing to become, and nowhere you are meant to be. The world will go on turning gently without you for a while. You are allowed to let it all go and sink into rest. So let yourself fall, slowly, as snow falls through still air, with no hurry and no fear of landing. Let the last few thoughts come loose and scatter, and do not chase a single one of them. They were only ever passing through. Let your sleep be deep, and let it be kind to you. Let it carry you down into a quiet so complete that you forget, for a while, that you were ever anything but at peace. And when you rise again, may a little of this softness still be in you, waiting beneath the noise of the day, there, whenever you think to return to it. There is nothing more now. Only this. Only rest. Only the long, slow breath carrying you down. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk.